What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be lifting the Jeep, finally. So, had the YJ for a while now. It's on stock leaf springs. It does have aftermarket shocks, or at least I think they are. Either way, the suspension's extremely worn out and there's basically like nothing left of it. So, anytime you go over any bump, it's really bouncy. The car kind of like skips around. So probably not safe. Really excited for this. It's a 2.5 inch lift from rough country. Hopefully this will change the ride a lot. So a couple things that I'm doing to make it more comfortable. You saw I put the new seats in. We're gonna do this 2.5 inch lift and then probably also put some new bigger tires on it.
So you can see there's some kind of aftermarket shock on it, but in terms of the leaf spring, it's pretty flat. Like there's almost like no bend to it right there. Shake the Jeep, there's really not much wiggle to it. So this suspension right now isn't really doing too much. We're gonna start off with the front of the Jeep. I'm gonna put some jack stands underneath the frame to support it. We'll start taking off all the old parts. Basically for the front, you have to detach the sway bar and one of the ends of the traction bar. After you do that, you can take off the shock, unscrew the U-bolts, and then we'll need to use the jack stand to support the axle while we take off the leaf springs one by one so the axle doesn't fall out. And then put everything back together, wait until we sit it back on the ground before we torque everything down, just so that everything is situated properly and nothing binds up. And then once we do the front, we'll spin the car around and do the same thing to the rear. I think the rear is gonna be a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about the track bar and the sway bar. All in all, I think this is supposed to take about 3 hours. Hopefully I can do it in that time. We'll see. All right, so here we go. Here's stock. So right now, between 3.5 and 3 3/4. The back and then the front. Ooh, really low. Front, we're just barely getting over 2 inches.
And since I'm gonna be taking the wheels off anyway, you'll notice the center caps on the wheels, they're all rusted out. They look terrible, check that out. So I got brand new ones, hopefully they fit. All right, so I went around and I loosened up all the lug nuts on the front wheels, and then we got the jack in place here. So right there on the front axle, and now it's just time to lift it up. It's lifted, it's jacked up, we got the wheels off, so now it's time to get the front shocks out. All right, we're making some progress. So, got the original shocks off.
Basically, here's where it was at one point in time, so that's out of there. Let's see. Right here, here's the mounting area for it. So you could tell, like, look at all, these are all like all the polyurethane bushings or whatever that were on the original shocks, or not the original, but the shocks that I had on here, all just cracked off. I mean, you could tell they're old, so.
Already I'm certain that the new suspension is gonna make a world of difference.
All right, so another update right here. So we got the sway bar links pulled off of the base plate for the U-bolts that holds the axle to the leaf springs. And then got the driver's side leaf spring off. It was actually pretty easy. I mean, used a rubber hammer to knock some of the stuff off, but just so you can see comparison, here's the original and here's the new. So you can definitely tell I'm gonna get some height out of this, more than probably 2.5 inches, even though that's what it's supposed to be.
All right, so it's obviously dark outside now. Took me about 4 hours just to do the front suspension, just because the axle wasn't lining up perfectly with the grooves on the leaf springs. So that took a little bit of elbow grease. Finally got everything torqued down in the front. I'll walk around and point it all out when it's brighter outside. I'm gonna switch gears. I actually took it out for a quick drive. Drives really nicely. Everything sounds great, feels great. Now I just need to install the rear suspension. So I'm gonna do that. Then we're gonna do a recap of everything and I'll tell you all the torque specs I used and how I went about everything. Okay, so the lift kit is finally installed on the Jeep. Before I show you the lift kit and walk you through it, I want you to see the old parts. So keep in mind, this is an 88 YJ. The suspension was upgraded at some point in time, but it had to have been a long time ago. Look at this. First, the old leaf springs, you can tell, I mean, these things are all rusty. I mean, they're flat. I mean, there's not much bend to them at all. And then you have the shocks, which look at this is fully depressed. Like there's no spring back in that one at all. This one, hardly at all. This one was missing the polyurethane bushing in it. Then you have the front ones. The bushings up here and down here were so bad that they just cracked all over the place. So, you know, this is obviously why the ride was so rough, is that these were rusted out, old, flattened out. Then there was nothing left of the shocks. And then finally we replaced these little things right here. So that's all the old stuff. And now we have the new stuff. So we've got a nice little chrome
center caps on the tires now. And check that out. There's the rear leaf spring. You get the front leaf spring right there.
Couple things you're gonna want. Definitely, at the bare minimum, 2 jack stands and 2 jacks. Definitely don't try to do it with just 2 jack stands and a jack. You either need an additional jack or some additional jack stands. And the reason why is because when you release the tension on the suspension, it comes down so far that it doesn't allow it to line up when you're trying to put the new leaf springs on, and it makes for a huge pain. I'll definitely start with the front of the car. When you're working on the front, you can put the parking brake on and you can put it in gear, and that locks the rear wheel for the most part. And then you can jack up the front, and obviously it's gonna tilt back a little bit when you're working on the front. However, when you move to the rear of the car, the front's already gonna be a little bit more elevated than the rear. So when you lift the back end of the car up, it really kind of makes the car flat instead of having it lean one direction. And since you can't really lock the front wheels up that well, I mean, definitely chalk the tires on the front and back whenever you do this. But I think it just helps it as like an additional safety precaution. So that might be why the instructions say do the front first and then do the rear. Front was a little bit more tricky than the rear, just because you have to undo the sway bar links and the track bar. But once you get all that done, put the new leaf springs on, get everything bolted up, put everything back in. It's pretty straightforward. You don't want to torque anything initially, you just want to get everything somewhat snug. And then drop the car, let it set, and then torque everything. And so in terms of torques that I use, and please leave it in the comment section below if there's something that I missed or I'm off on in terms of my torques. But the bottom of the U-bolts, those are torqued to 65 foot-pounds. The sway bar links on the bottom down here were torqued to 45 foot-pounds. The track bar down here is 55 foot-pounds. You have your shackles. These are torqued to 95 foot-pounds. And then where the leaf spring meets the frame in the middle of the car, that's torqued to 105 foot-pounds. So those are all the torques for the front end. And then obviously, you know, get your wheels on, torque those down too. I torqued my wheels to 105 foot-pounds as well. Shocks in the front went in really easily because all you have to do is slip the top end into the mounting bracket for it and then just push the bottom of the shock into the mount that's on the axle. So the front ones, they went in really no problem at all. And for the torques on the shocks, it's 45 foot-pounds. So you can see here, here's the front end with the new leaf springs, got the new shocks right there. In terms of the U-bolts, for my YJ, I ended up being able to use one of the new U-bolts on each side of the front axle. That one I was able to use because it matched up with the holes in the leaf spring bracket at the bottom. The other U-bolts did not match up. So they're actually 2 different sizes of U-bolts. You have 2 larger ones that go in the thicker portion of the axle, and then you have 6 that are just for the regular side of the axle. So over here on the left side and then back on the left side. Since this is a YJ and this is a 2.5 liter, my guess is that it has a smaller axle than the 4.0 liter. I could be wrong, but because of that, the original U-bolts were thinner than the U-bolts that were provided from Rough Country, so I had to use the original U-bolts again. And in terms of the hardware, at the bottom you'll see I have mixed hardware. If the U-bolt stuck out long enough for me to thread the washer and the nut on and have it get to the nylon part of the lock washer, then I used the new hardware. If it did not go long enough to get the nylon part, then I just used the original stock hardware. But all my stock hardware ended up working really great. Now let's go check out the back. Again, you can see I got the leaf springs right here. You got the shocks up there. So for the rear suspension, it's a very similar process. What you want to do first, lift the car up, put jack stands up onto the frame. This is where I recommend having at least another jack stand in addition to your jack. You want to lift up the rear axle, and then what I would do is jack stands on the axle on either side. Whenever you're doing the rear of the car, once you loosen up both sides, that axle can drop all the way out. So be careful when you're doing that. But again, what you're going to do, lift the car, you're going to take the wheels off, take off the shocks, take off the U-bolt nuts, and then you're going to undo the original leaf spring. So again, make sure you support that rear axle in addition to supporting the car. What I did was I left the shackles pretty loose after I took the leaf spring off, and that way I had wiggle room to place the new leaf spring up in it. When I put the new leaf springs on, I started with the front where it attaches to the frame, and then kind of worked my way back as I was installing it. Again, on this, I had to use my stock U-bolts. I wasn't able to use the new ones that were provided by Rough Country. And again, I think that's because this is a smaller axle. Once you get your leaf springs on, you know, tighten everything up pretty loosely. Get your shock in, and then once you get your shock in, you can put the wheels back on. So much quicker process than on the front. And then once you have all that in place, then you can drop the car and really torque everything down. The U-bolt nuts, again, 65 foot-pounds. For the shocks, it's going to be 45 foot-pounds at both the lower mounting point on the axle and then also onto the frame. So you'll notice the rear shocks look a little bit different from the front shocks. And then you've got 95 foot-pounds back here on these shackles, and you got 105 foot-pounds again where it meets the frame, and then again, I tightened my wheels up to 105 foot-pounds. So now let's see the difference that it made. So when we first did our measurements here, we had about 3.5 inches of gap between the fender and the tire in the rear, and about 2 inches in the front. Moment of truth, here we go. 3.5 to 6 3/4. We actually gained 3 1/4 inch on the rear. And again, that's because the front was so depressed because the leaf springs were worn out. So 3 1/4 on the rear. And on the front, again, this was 2 inches before, and now we're at 5 3/4 right here. So we went up 3 3/4 on the front. But it gave me 3 3/4 in the front and 3 1/4 in the rear. I did get a chance to drive it around a little bit. I love it. It is so much better. I mean, you saw all the broken parts that were installed on this before. With all the new parts, it drives so much smoother. It's nice and quiet. There's no weird noises, no sounds. It feels solid. It feels like it's a brand new car. I'm sure the front seats help with that too. This lift kit, I ended up getting it for $499. It's a 2.5 inch lift kit on a YJ. It's from Rough Country. Extremely happy with it. Yeah, it took me probably about 6 hours total to install, but that's because I was doing it by myself. I didn't have anyone else to help. So it gets a little bit tricky when you're having to push and pull axles and jack things up, but I'm very happy with the outcome of it. So check it out. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions on lifting your YJ, or if there's anything else you'd love to see on this installation, let me know. I'm happy to get back into the car, take some pictures and videos if it'll help anybody, but definitely recommend this. If you have an older YJ with a stock suspension or an old suspension, 2.5 inch lift kit, you don't have to drop the transfer case, you don't have to modify too much. It's cheap, 500 bucks. You can do it in 6 hours or less, actually, if you're a better mechanic than I, or you have a friend to help you out. So I'll leave links for it in the description below. And again, thanks again for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.